Story number 1. Intake interview. I arrived at the safe house on a Tuesday afternoon in late October to relieve Marshal Kendrick for a 72-hour rotation. The witness was a 41-year-old accountant from Billings who had agreed to testify against his former employer in a federal racketeering case. Trial was set to begin in 8 days. The house was a 2-storied timber structure 40 minutes outside Kalispell, set back from the county road by a quarter-mile of gravel drive. Standard layout: 3 bedrooms upstairs, living area and kitchen on the ground floor, basement access through the utility room. Kendrick gave me the handoff briefing in the driveway. The witness had been cooperative during intake and transport. No medical issues. No requests for contact with family. Kendrick mentioned the man had refused to sleep in the upstairs bedroom assigned to him and had been spending nights on the living room couch instead. When I asked if he had provided a reason, Kendrick said the witness told him the room was too cold. I made a note to check the heating system. The witness was polite during our introduction. He asked if I needed anything from him, and I told him to maintain his routine. He spent most of the first day reading a paperback novel at the kitchen table. I performed a full perimeter check at 1800 hours and confirmed all window locks and door seals. The upstairs bedroom was not noticeably colder than the rest of the house. On my second night, I woke at approximately 2:30 in the morning to the sound of someone speaking upstairs. The voice was male. I could not make out the words, but the tone was conversational, as though he were answering questions. I moved to the living room and found the witness asleep on the couch, still wearing his clothes from the previous day. I had watched him fall asleep there less than an hour before while I was completing my incident log at the kitchen table. I went upstairs with my sidearm drawn. All 3 bedroom doors were closed. I had left the witness's assigned room open per protocol to allow for faster visual sweeps. I cleared all 3 rooms and found them empty. I checked the windows, all locked from the inside. I returned downstairs and observed the witness for 10 minutes. He did not wake. The following evening, I was reviewing case documentation in the kitchen when I realized the witness had not moved for some time. He was sitting in the armchair near the base of the staircase, facing the stairs directly. His hands were on the armrests and his eyes were open. I timed it. He stared at the staircase for nearly 20 minutes without blinking. When I asked if he needed medical attention, he turned to me and said he was waiting for her to come down. I asked who he meant. He said he did not know her name. I updated my incident log and noted possible psychological distress. I increased my visual checks to every 30 minutes. At 0300 hours on the 4th night, I woke to find the witness standing at the base of the stairs. He was facing upward with his right hand extended, palm open, as though helping someone descend. His fingers were slightly bent as if supporting weight. He took one step backward, then another, in a slow and careful rhythm. I called his name twice. He did not respond. After approximately 90 seconds, he lowered his hand and returned to the couch without acknowledging my presence. I contacted my supervising inspector at 0600 hours and requested immediate psychiatric evaluation and possible relocation. I was instructed to maintain position until the scheduled transport on Sunday due to limited safe house availability and the proximity of the trial date. I was told to document any further incidents and authorized to use sedation protocols if the witness became a danger to himself. On the 5th night, I woke at 02:15 to cold air moving through the ground floor. The front door was open. The witness was standing on the porch in a t-shirt and sweatpants. The temperature was 28 degrees. He was speaking in a low voice, facing the driveway. I approached from behind and heard him say that she could not come with us. He said it several times, apologizing between repetitions. I asked him to step back inside. He turned and looked at me as though I had interrupted something important. He said she did not understand why she had to stay. I brought him inside and locked the door. He was shaking from the cold but did not seem aware of it. I wrapped him in a blanket and sat him on the couch. I asked who he had been speaking to. He said he did not know, but that she had been in the house since before he arrived. He said she came downstairs every night and stood near him. He said she did not speak, but that he could tell she wanted to leave. I made the decision to sedate the witness per emergency medical protocol without prior authorization. I administered 4 milligrams of lorazepam from the medical kit and contacted my supervising inspector to request immediate extraction. I reported a mental health crisis and did not describe what I had observed. I was instructed to remain on site until a transport team arrived. The witness slept until the transport team reached the house at 1100 hours. He was relocated to a secure medical facility in Missoula. He testified 8 days later via video link. His testimony was admitted without objection. I was reassigned to courthouse security in Helena, pending a review of my decision to sedate without prior authorization. The review was scheduled for 3 weeks later and then cancelled without explanation. The safe house was taken offline for maintenance in December. I was told it had been returned to rotation in March, but I have not been assigned there again. My incident log was filed under administrative records, and I was instructed not to discuss the assignment outside official channels. No formal report was requested. The case was closed following a guilty verdict on 6 of 7 counts. Story number 2. Water sample 19. I arrived at the Harmon Valley Treatment Facility at 4:30 in the afternoon on October 23rd for a standard quarterly compliance check. The plant operator, a man named Dennis Kovar, met me at the gate and mentioned that the office had been receiving calls about a metallic taste in the tap water. He said it had started about 2 weeks prior, maybe 3. He was not certain of the exact date. We began with turbidity and chlorine residual tests in the distribution system. Both came back within acceptable parameters. I noted this in my field tablet. Kovar walked me through the daily logs and pointed out that filter 3 had required backwashing twice as often as normal over the past 11 days. He said he had reported this to his supervisor, but had been told to continue standard operations unless readings fell outside regulatory limits. When we descended to the filtration gallery, I observed that the sandbed in filter 3 appeared darker than the others. The difference was subtle, but consistent across the entire surface. I asked Kovar when the media had last been replaced. He said 4 months prior, during the annual maintenance cycle. I made a note to collect a sample. The backwash discharge line showed staining along the interior wall. I examined it with a flashlight. The discoloration was not consistent with typical iron oxidation. It had a greenish cast in certain angles of light. I asked Kovar if the source water had shown elevated iron or manganese recently. He said no, and that he had checked the raw water quality lobs that morning. I collected a sample from the filter underdrain using a sterile bottle from my field kit. The water contained a fine sediment that settled slowly. Under visual inspection, it did not match any material used in the treatment process or typically found in the source water for this region. I labeled the sample and placed it in the cooler in my vehicle. Kovar admitted, as we walked back toward the intake structure, that he had already replaced the filter media in filter 3 once. He said this had been 4 days ago, on the 19th. He had not logged it as a maintenance action because his supervisor told him it was unnecessary unless the replacement was part of scheduled work. The discoloration had returned within 36 hours. I asked why he had not included this in his initial report to me. He said he thought it was not relevant since the water quality tests were all passing. I informed him that any abnormal operational change was relevant to a compliance inspection. At the raw water intake, I found the screens partially blocked with organic matter. The material appeared to have been in the water for some time based on the degree of decomposition. Kovar insisted he had cleared the screens that same morning at approximately 7:15. I took a photograph of the blockage and noted the discrepancy. I requested access to the intake structure logbook. Kovar retrieved it from the control room. I observed that the previous 3 entries covering the period from October 16th to October 22nd had been made in different handwriting than earlier records. Each entry noted routine conditions. I compared the handwriting to Kovar's signature on the daily operations summary. It did not match. When I asked him about this, he said a contractor had been on site for a walkthrough and had offered to fill in the logs as a courtesy. He could not recall the contractor's name or company. I made the decision to recommend immediate suspension of Filter 3 and direct monitoring of the raw water source. I informed Kovar that I would be filing a non-compliance notice regarding the intake log discrepancies and the failure to document abnormal filter performance. He asked if this would result in a shutdown. I told him that would be determined by the regional office. At approximately 6:45 in the evening, the plant supervisor arrived. His name was given as Martin Ehlers. He said he had been contacted by the regional manager and asked to meet me before I left the site. Ehlers told me that the regional office had already been briefed on the situation and that a federal liaison had instructed them to continue normal operations pending further review. He did not provide the name of the liaison or the agency involved. I asked Ehlers for documentation of this instruction. He said it had been communicated by phone and that he had not received written confirmation. I informed him that I would be filing my report regardless, and that my recommendations would stand unless overridden by my division chief. I left the facility at 7:10 in the evening and submitted my report by 8:30 that same night. I noted non-compliance with monitoring protocols under Section 4 of the State Water Quality Standards and recommended follow-up within 72 hours. I flagged the case for priority review. On October 28th, I received an email from my division chief stating that the Harmon Valley case had been transferred to federal jurisdiction. The email did not specify which agency. I attempted to access the case file through the shared database and found that my credentials no longer permitted entry. I called the division chief's office and was told that the matter was being handled at a higher level and that no further action was required from me. I submitted a formal request for clarification on November 2nd. I received a response on November 9th indicating that the case had been archived under an administrative closure code I did not recognize. The response included a note that subsequent quarterly inspections of the Harmon Valley facility would be conducted by an external contractor under a separate compliance framework. I have not been assigned to that facility since. The contractor's reports are not accessible through any system I have clearance to view. The sample I collected from Filter 3 was logged into the state lab on October 24th, but no results were ever returned to me. When I inquired, I was told the sample had been forwarded to another laboratory for specialized analysis. No further information was provided. The facility remains in operation. I have seen no public notices regarding water quality violations or service interruptions in Harmon Valley. Story number 3. The Handoff. I was assigned to maintain visual surveillance on a dead drop location in the 3rd level of a downtown Portland parking garage. The work was standard counterintelligence, no expected contact, no probable complications. I had done this type of observation 40 or 50 times before. The assignment briefing took less than 10 minutes. I arrived at 1900 hours and positioned my vehicle 3 rows back from the designated spot, angled to maintain a clear line of sight. The garage was typical for downtown, concrete and fluorescent lighting, half empty on a Tuesday night. I had a thermos of coffee and a radio linked to my partner, who was stationed on the 5th level as Overwatch. We ran comms checks every 30 minutes. The target vehicle arrived on schedule at 2100 hours. It was a silver sedan, older model, license plate matching the information in our briefing packet. It parked in the designated spot beneath an overhead light that was malfunctioning, cycling between dim and full brightness every 20 seconds or so. I logged the arrival time and began standard observation protocol. The driver remained in the vehicle. This was not unusual for the first few minutes. Previous surveillance reports indicated the driver typically waited 3 to 5 minutes before exiting to make the drop. I watched the silhouette through the rear window. The head and shoulders were visible, backlit by the malfunctioning light. At 21:11, the driver had still not exited. I noted this in my log. The established pattern from 3 previous drops showed the driver never remained in the vehicle longer than 6 minutes. I radioed my partner to confirm visual on any foot traffic approaching from the stairwells. He reported negative contact. I continued observing. The driver's silhouette had not changed position, not a shift of the shoulders, not a turn of the head. 11 minutes of absolute stillness. I have conducted surveillance on sleeping subjects who moved more than this. The posture was upright, hands presumably on the steering wheel, but there was no movement at all. It seemed physiologically improbable. At 21:15, I decided to reposition for a better angle. I exited my vehicle and moved on foot to a support column that would give me a direct view through the sedan's windshield. I kept my radio on and my movements slow. The garage was quiet except for the hum of ventilation and the tick of cooling engines. Before I reached the column, my partner's voice came through the radio. His tone was confused, not alarmed, but uncertain in a way that made me stop walking. He said he had visual on the target vehicle. Same silver sedan, same license plate, parked on the second level in a spot directly below mine. The driver was visible in the same position, motionless, beneath another malfunctioning light. I looked back at the vehicle on my level. It had not moved. I confirmed this with my partner. He insisted the vehicle on his level had been there for at least 4 minutes, possibly longer. He had been running a perimeter check and had not been watching it continuously. I returned to my vehicle and requested clarification from dispatch. While I was waiting for a response, my partner radioed again. He said he was now on the 5th level and the same silver sedan was parked there as well. Same plate, same driver, same motionless silhouette. He read the plate number twice to confirm. Dispatch came back and reported a third sighting. One of the roving units had logged the same vehicle on level 5 at the same timestamp I had logged it on level 3. The dispatcher asked if we were reading the plate correctly. I confirmed 3 times that I was looking at the vehicle and it had not moved from the 3rd level. My partner descended to the 2nd level to verify his sighting. He reported the vehicle was still there. I had continuous visual on the 3rd level vehicle. Dispatch confirmed the roving unit still had visual on level 5. All 3 observations were occurring simultaneously. I was instructed to maintain position and await backup. Protocol required immediate extraction and handoff to specialized units for any incident involving unexplained duplication or spatial anomalies. I did not know we had protocols for this kind of thing, but the dispatcher read the code without hesitation. At 21:23, all 3 vehicles departed. My partner reported the 2nd level sedan reversed out of its spot and drove toward the exit ramp. The roving unit reported the same from level 5. I watched the 3rd level sedan back out smoothly, headlights on, and proceed down the ramp toward street level. The movements were synchronized as far as I could tell from the radio reports, all 3 vehicles leaving within seconds of each other in different directions. I followed at a distance. The sedan exited onto Burnside and turned east. I radioed my partner, who reported his vehicle had exited onto 10th Avenue heading south. The roving unit reported the 5th level vehicle had taken the Morrison Bridge exit. Dispatch coordinated with traffic cameras to track all 3. 2 minutes later, dispatch reported no record of any silver sedan entering or exiting the parking structure within the last 4 hours. The traffic cameras showed nothing. The garage's internal security system had been offline for maintenance since 1800 hours, a detail that had not been included in our briefing. Backup arrived at 21:40. I was instructed to return to the garage and wait. My partner and the roving unit were recalled. We were debriefed separately by two officers I did not recognize, neither of whom provided names or unit identification. I was asked to describe what I had seen in detail, then asked to describe it again. I was not asked to speculate. I filed an equipment malfunction report as instructed. The dead drop location was permanently retired from operational use without explanation. My partner transferred to a desk assignment the following week. He did not respond to my messages. I was reassigned to routine background checks for the next 6 months, all low-level clearance work, nothing in the field. The case file was reclassified above my clearance level. I was advised in writing that continued inquiry would be considered a security violation. I signed the acknowledgement and returned it to my supervisor, who filed it without comment. The incident was officially closed and archived under a designation I was not authorized to access.